everybody, Germ here from Mentally Diseased, and this is the 500th time I've tried to make this video. Apparently talking about really personal stuff on YouTube is hard. I want to talk today about where I came from, how I left the organization, and what it was like growing up as a gay Jehovah's Witness. I was born into the religion, and both of my parents were recent converts that had come from troubled pasts and really messed up families. By messed up, I mean that I have relatives that are on death row, relatives with life in prison, murder, kidnapping, you name the crime, I have a relative that's in jail for it. Prior to marrying my mother, my dad had 3 children from a previous marriage. My oldest brother died when he was just a baby. I can't tell you how it happened because the story changes every time I hear it. My other 2 older siblings were taken away by social services due to neglect. So you can see my parents had a lot of guilt to work through, and the witnesses came to their door promising forgiveness and a chance for my father to see his son again in paradise. The fact that Armageddon was coming so soon only motivated them to convert faster, because it wouldn't be long before my dad could see his son again, but they had to change and they had to do it quickly. So when they had me, I think they really felt they had something to prove. And there was a lot of pressure on me to be the best little witness kid that I could be. I felt like I needed to prove that not everyone in our family was going to be a failure and we weren't all doomed to go to prison. So I was indoctrinated thoroughly. My parents were not people that had been witnesses their whole lives and were kind of used to Armageddon not showing up. They thought it was coming now. So the first thing I ever knew was that the end of the world was coming, and there was no point in focusing on anything but spiritual things right now because it was coming so fast. I knew this before I learned how to pour a bowl of cereal. My first picture book was not Cat in a Hat. It was, well, it was my book of Bible stories, and it was a book called Revelation, Its Grand Climax at Hand. Back then, witnesses used to hold 3 meetings a week. 2 of them were at the Kingdom Hall, and they functioned kind of like regular church does. But the third one was a smaller group held in someone's living room, and it was explained to me that we were about to face persecution under the Great Tribulation, and we'd have to go into hiding in smaller groups. Book study was kind of our pre-assigned smaller group to go into hiding with, and meeting every Thursday night was sort of practice for when that would happen. At the time, we were studying the Revelation book, and I didn't really know how to read yet, so all I had to guide me along were the pictures. And these are pictures of fire falling from the sky, harlots being devoured by 7-headed beasts, the bodies of people killed in Armageddon. And seeing all of that in a setting that's said to be practice for a great tribulation really instilled in me a sense of fear and paranoia. These are some of my first memories. The threat of Armageddon was so real that I only attended public school from 2nd to 5th grade. Beyond that, they enrolled me in kind of a hands-off homeschool, which my mom quietly encouraged me to keep up with. But my dad, who was head of the house and a man prone to anger, told me that there was no point in focusing on it since the end was coming so soon. Guess who I listened to? To this day, 5th grade is the highest level of education I've completed in full, which is a lot easier to get away with than you might expect with a bunch of pencil whipping. At least it was at the time. They probably caught up to my wily ways by now. So I did not learn algebra or history or politics. I learned how to speak on a stage. I learned how to talk to strangers at their doors, and I learned how to have an answer for anything that they might say. And this was great for me because my goals did not line up with a formal education. I had something to prove here. I wanted to be the first among my friends to be baptized. I wanted to be a teenage pioneer. I wanted to go to Bethel, and the end game for me was to write for Watchtower. That's what I really wanted to do. Nothing I learned in school brought me closer to those goals, so I didn't bother, and I was commended for focusing on the things that I did. I was putting Jehovah first. So my family moved around a lot, and we lived primarily in rural Colorado in towns with populations ranging from 500 people to 1,500 people. Being homeschooled in places like this made it really easy to abide by Watchtower's rules about not associating with people who aren't witnesses, because the only people I saw outside of my immediate family were at meetings and field service. This made for an incredibly lonely and isolated upbringing. We didn't even have internet for a long time because Watchtower was still holding the position that bringing the internet into your house would also bring Satan into your home. All of my information was controlled, and I had very little outside influence. But it was the only thing I knew, so I never realized how unhealthy my environment was. A lot of people ask me, when did you first know that you're gay? And that is an impossible question to answer, because there were signs of it my whole life. My parents probably should have had an inkling when they saw me stomping around the house in my mom's wedding clothes, smearing makeup all over my face. I had a lot of schoolgirl crushes on older teenage boys, kind of a, oh, he's so cool, I want to be his friend kind of thing. My best friend growing up was really homophobic, and he noticed a lot of the ways I behaved and would shame me for them, so I learned to modify my behavior and tried really hard to act macho. But even then, I didn't know for sure that I was gay until, TMI alert, we're about to get into it here. I didn't know until I had my first nocturnal emission. And I remember that night clearly because I was horrified. Number one, I didn't know what the fuck that was. And number two, I realized I might be gay. Every image I'd ever seen of Armageddon came back to me in that moment, except this time it was me falling to fire from the sky. I broke out into cold sweat, full-on panic attack. So the first thing I did was go for my trusty blue Young People Ask book. Young People Ask is Watchtower's horrifying guide to puberty and adolescence. This was the 1989 edition, which didn't have anything really in it about homosexuality, not a full section like it does now, but it did have a section in it on masturbation. Sometimes I wonder if I'm the only witness Mel that has ever existed that for real did not masturbate. If I'm wrong about that, please let me know, because I feel like a big dope. This is ridiculous, but I didn't even know how. Couldn't have done it if I wanted to, wouldn't have known where to begin. I was a sheltered goody two-shoes, and my teen years were plagued with nocturnal emissions. So I read this chapter about masturbation, and it mentions that it can lead to homosexuality. So I sit there racking my brain, trying to think of some moment I might have accidentally masturbated that had led to this. And I remember my father telling me during the talk that I was about to start growing body hair, and it was very, very, very important that I never touch myself except to wash. And I thought to myself, oh my God, I had no idea it was that serious. I have to be way more careful now. I won't touch myself at all. A few weeks later, my mom comes storming through the house, yelling at all of us boys because we need to learn how to aim. She's sick of cleaning pee off the walls. So, okay, I guess that wasn't it. Something else must be wrong here. I started going through the family library, scouring the index books for any mention of homosexuality that I could find. And I found myself being described as having an unnatural sexual perversion, that I was obscene, vile, repulsive, detestable, unworthy of life, doomed to be a pedophile and a sadomasochist. Sadomasochist? Sadomasochist. I don't even know how to say the word, but that's what I'm doomed for. I was devastated. I had no idea where I'd gone wrong or how this had happened to me. I'd been a good Christian kid my whole life. I'd been giving Bible readings up on the stage since I was 8. I was going out in field service all the time, and I was working toward baptism so that I could be a pioneer. But I read that I could change. There had been cases of people who had changed, so that's what I set out to do. Around this time, the pressure to get baptized was really starting to mount. For those that may not be familiar, baptism for witnesses isn't really like baptism for other Christian religions. It's a big deal. It's more like Scientology's billion-year contract. By getting baptized, you are committing the rest of your eternal life to this organization. You're promising to go into it with a clear conscience and vowing that nothing that comes up in your life from this point on will ever get in the way of that. I took it very seriously, and I have my mom to thank for that. She always thought the kids were getting baptized too early, and she always told me over and over, don't let anybody pressure you into doing this. Make sure that you are absolutely 100% ready before you do it. And I wasn't ready. I could not get baptized knowing that I had this thing wrong with me. So I prayed and I prayed and I prayed for Jehovah to help me with this, to take this problem away from me. And I sat there and I watched all these kids starting to get baptized, and I was so frustrated. I had all of these goals, and here were these kids that were getting baptized that were, in my opinion, just half-assing it. They were doing it because either their parents told them to do it or it was the cool thing to do, and I really cared. I really believed, but I was stuck with this problem. I started getting a lot of passive-aggressive comments. Oh, you're not even baptized yet? What in the world is holding you back? Tommy got baptized last year and he's 2 years younger than you. You know, Jehovah's not gonna let you through Armageddon if you have the truth and you haven't gotten baptized yet. It's time for you to make the truth your own. Like, the pressure was on in a serious way. I prayed more than I ever had in my life. I dove into field service. I dove into my personal studies. I tried to make the best comments that I could at the meetings. I started asking the elders to give me more Bible readings on the stage because I thought the more I buried myself in this, the more likely it was that Jehovah would fix me. But it didn't happen. This went on for a while. Eventually the witnesses got a little bit more lax about the internet and started saying, well, I guess you can have it as long as you keep it in the living room in an open space where you're less likely to give into temptation. So when my parents would leave for the day, I hopped online and I looked up gay conversion therapy. I was willing to do whatever it took to fix this problem so that I could get baptized with a clear conscience. Luckily, I didn't have the means for most of the conversion methods I found, so what I did was I kept a safety pin in my pocket. Anytime I had an errant thought, or I looked at someone in the wrong way, or I thought about someone in the wrong way, anything that was remotely gay, I took that safety pin and I jabbed myself in the thigh with it. And I prayed while I did it. I kept doing it and doing it and doing it until the thoughts went away, and I'd pray, Jehovah, 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 please take these thoughts away from me. Please cure me of this. If I was at home alone, I'd actually go to the bathroom and make myself throw up to make the thoughts go away. Anything I could do to associate the thoughts with something negative, I did. Let me tell you, when you're that age and you're not masturbating, you're not having sex, and you are trying to punish yourself every time you have a sexual thought, your brain goes wild. It rebels against you the more that you suppress it. Everything that I did nothing to stop the thoughts from coming, but they did succeed in coupling those thoughts with feelings of nausea, fear, paranoia, especially knowing that Jehovah was privy to my thoughts. He knew what I was thinking, and that mortified me. I wouldn't let myself fall asleep because I was afraid I'd have a nocturnal emission. I would stay up all night long until I literally could not keep my eyes open anymore. My parents thought that I had a sleeping problem, that I was sleeping too much. No, I just was not sleeping because I was so afraid that I would have a sexual dream. Nights that I did fall asleep, a thunderstorm would wake me up and I'd jolt out of bed thinking Armageddon was here and I was about to die. So I fell under a deep depression, and people in the congregation started to notice, and they began to analyze. A sister came to our house once and literally rummaged through my things looking for things that I was doing wrong. Is this Star Wars? Isn't that magic? Don't tell me this is Lord of the Rings. When I became depressed, it wasn't, he's having a really hard time, how can we help him? It was, what is he doing wrong? And as the congregation began to notice me, my father began to notice as well, and he became very abusive. He'd always been neglectful at the best of times and abusive at the worst of times, but it really started to ramp up as I was a teenager. And he would beat me black and blue for the smallest things. And he wouldn't stop. He was like a bull. He'd come at me and he'd scream the whole time. Go ahead, call the police. What do you think they're gonna do? Jehovah protects me. I answer to no authority on this earth. Spare the rod, spoil the child. There were a few times that he beat me so bad that he actually paid me not to tell anybody. Of course, I took the money and I ran and told my mom. So we had a shepherding call, and it was supposed to be about this, but I also went into the meeting deciding that I was going to come out to the elders. I thought to myself, surely if they had cases of people that changed from being gay, they must have some program that can help me. And part of me hoped that whatever this program was, that they would take me away to be there. I hoped maybe it was some kind of camp or something, anything to take me out of the house and away from my dad that would save me from my problem and save me from him as well. The shepherding call did not go the way I thought it would, and luckily I never got to the point of coming out. They interrupted everything that we were trying to tell them to say, basically, your father is the head of the house, and he may punish you however he deems fit. They essentially implied that it was our fault for driving him to anger in the first place, and we just needed to be more submissive and listen to what he said. All of this was my fault. The fact that I was gay was my fault. The fact that my father was beating me was my fault. And after the meeting ended, everyone in the congregation started to treat me differently. It was like I'd been marked. What was supposed to be an in-confidence conversation between me and the elders rippled through the congregation like wildfire. At the time in my life when I thought that I would be a pioneer, somehow I'd found myself low-key marked as bad association. And I gave up. I realized that the elders couldn't help me, and this had to be between me and Jehovah, and at that point in my life, I felt like he'd forsaken me. Nothing I did could fix my problem. I felt guilty about everything. If it wasn't a cute guy mowing the lawn across the street, it was the fact that I love Star Wars. It absolutely killed me that I was lying about who I was, that I was pretending to show an interest in girls, that I was modifying my behavior. Everything I did was wrong, and I was so disappointed in myself because I had stopped doing my schooling. I'd set everything aside to really focus on being the best witness that I could. And nothing I did was ever good enough. On top of that, this meeting with the elders really encouraged my dad's behavior. He would have these fits of outrage, and after he was done, he would rummage through our things looking for something that we brought into the house that brought Satan in. Because it could never be that he had an anger problem, it was always he'd been possessed by Satan, and it was our fault for bringing Satan into the house in the first place. Everything was our fault. I ran away from home a few times. I really contemplated suicide even at such a young age. I felt so trapped and so powerless, and there was no one that could help me. Jehovah wasn't listening, and the elders wouldn't help me. My mom was powerless because of the way things are set up there. You have to listen to the head of the house. It felt so hopeless. So in the absence of support from anyone in the congregation, I started to reach out online. I started a really dramatic live journal. I joined some chat rooms, and I made some friends that are with me to this day. My 18th birthday rolls around and I'm still an unbaptized publisher. My parents decided that they were moving into a smaller place that didn't have room for me, couldn't wait to get rid of my ass, and I was fine with that because I wanted to get away from my dad. They did arrange for me to rent a trailer on another witness family's land, so there was kind of a weird limbo there for a while where my parents had moved into their new place. I was still waiting for the trailer I was moving in to be ready for me, so I was at the old house all by myself while it was waiting to sell. It was a whole thing. I was talking to this guy online and I invited him over. I figured this was going to be my only chance at freedom for a long time. Why not take advantage of it? See what it's like. So this guy comes over, he's 26, just became a cop, and this is the first time that we're meeting. And gosh, it feels like right away he gets there and I hear my mom's car pull up outside. I try to shove this 6'2" dude under my bed, and my mom barges in, and I'm like, oh, hi, yeah, just studying the Watchtower for Sunday meeting today. You know, nothing going on here. Of course she knows what's going on, and, you know, it all comes out in that moment. My memory is kind of a blur at that point because everything happened really fast. Everyone left, and I was left alone there to just pace around and try to figure out how am I going to get out of this. And then I get a phone call from one of the elders. Of course, my mom ran straight to the elders and ratted me out. I stared at that number and my heart is just hammering, and I know that I have to decide in this moment, before that phone call hits the voicemail, I have to decide right now what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. I wasn't ready for this. I just turned 18. This was 3 weeks after I turned 18. I had no exit plan, no money saved up, nowhere to go. I still believed in Jehovah, and I still believed the witnesses had the truth, but they were wrong about this. They were wrong about gay people. I knew this because I tried so hard to change and I couldn't. And I knew that there was nothing I did wrong that made it happen. Some stupid part of me was clinging onto this idea that they would find new light. They would realize that they were wrong about gay people and I could stay a witness and just carry on being gay. And I looked at that number and I thought, well, maybe it's a good thing that I never got baptized. Maybe what I've been agonizing over all this time is actually going to save me, because I mean, they can't disfellowship me. What's the worst that they can do? So I answer the phone, and the elder says that they would like to meet with me right away. And I remember the last time I met with the elders and how that went, so I was like, no thanks. He kept pressuring me to go to this meeting. He wouldn't take no for an answer, and something in me just snapped. I was sick of lying about everything, and I was sick of feeling guilty about everything, and I thought it was ridiculous that I had to answer to these clowns at all. I hadn't been baptized. He had no right to try and pressure me to go to this meeting where I knew I was only going to be berated. Why would I do that? So he said, fine, I guess we'll do this over the phone then. Are you going to stop being gay? No. It's not something I can just stop. I've tried and I've tried and I've tried, and I know you guys think that I don't pray, but I have done nothing but pray since I realized this has happened. Nothing I can do can change this. I don't really remember what he said after that because everything kind of crashed after I said the word no. My parents came with a bundle of letters from all of my friends ending our friendships. Obviously, the arrangement I'd had to rent from the other witnesses was no longer on the table, and my parents would no longer be supporting me or speaking to me. So just like that, I'd been cast out. Baptism or not did not matter. I was treated as disfellowshipped and shunned by my family, my friends, everyone I knew in real life, left with nowhere to go and no money in my pocket. The guy that I'd met up with actually reached out to check on me. After hearing about what had happened, he offered to move me out to go and live with him. Now, keep in mind, we had literally just met, but at this point, I was so desperate for something that I would have moved in with Jeffrey Dahmer if he had offered it. He lived in a studio apartment on the other side of the state, in just as rural of an area. So I moved out there with my cat. Those months in that studio apartment are some of the darkest days of my life. Despite all of my years of isolation growing up, I'd never felt so alone. This guy was really distant and gone for long stretches at a time, sometimes for days. There was no internet, so I couldn't connect with the worldly friends that I'd made online. I couldn't find a job, and I was living off a jar of coins I'd collected growing up. I tried calling home, I tried calling my old friends, nobody would answer. I remember getting so desperate to talk to somebody that I raided the neighbors' mailboxes for AOL free trial discs so that I could get online for a little bit. And I'd find some and I'd jump online and I'd update my live journal, try real hard to be positive about everything, reach out to whoever was online at the time, and then my trial time would run out and I would be alone again. This guy that I moved in with wasn't really a great dude. I don't want to talk too much crap about him because he was the only one that took me in, but he had some motives there. I was kind of a token house pet, and I eventually found out that when he was gone for those long periods of time, he was seeing other teenage boys, underage teenage boys. At the same time, he discovered that I'd been using AOL free trial discs to get online to talk to my friends, which apparently was not a thing that he wanted me to do. That's how I came to see how possessive he had come to be over me. I was really an object, and he took that computer away and left for 3 days. So for 3 days, I had nothing to do but to sit there and ponder my lot in life. Completely isolated, no food in the fridge. My jar of coins had run out. I'd applied to every job in that little town that I could find, and having no education probably didn't help my case, and nobody wanted me. My situation is exactly what witnesses are counting on when they shun somebody. They want to throw you out into the world completely unequipped to deal with it until you feel so hopeless you have no choice but to crawl back to them. If you don't know anybody when you're kicked out, chances are the first person that offers to help you is going to be a predator. They know this and they're counting on you to shape your entire view of the world around it. That's why so many witnesses think that the world is so awful and the only good place is inside the organization. Now, this guy was a cop and he was a super Republican at that, so there were guns around the house. I sat at the dining room table all night long with one of those guns on the table. I looked at it and I thought, what's the worst that can happen? Either I take care of this now and hope that the witnesses are as wrong about suicide as they are about gay people, or I die in Armageddon. Either way, I die. I put the gun in my mouth just to see how it tastes, to try it out, and I thought to myself how unfair it was that I'd tried so hard. And I'd had the best intentions, but God had made me broken. And I thought, maybe I'm just a mistake and I shouldn't be here. It was on that night that my mother called me. And I know that sounds like one of those ridiculous someone knocked on the door miracle stories that witnesses like to tell, but it's true. She called me and she was crying and she said, "It's not right. I can't do this anymore. They can't keep me from talking to my own son. You weren't even baptized. I don't care what they do to me, but they can't make me do this." She went against the elders. She went against my father, the head of the house, risked getting disfellowshipped herself, and got me out of there. Shunning kills. It's cruel, and it has to be stopped. My mom only fully shunned me for a few months, and that's all it took for me to hit a point of no return. There are people out there who have not spoken to their parents in years. There are people who have taken their lives over it. I want to stress here how lucky I am. I'm lucky that somebody stopped shunning me, and honestly, I'm lucky that I got caught. This was the hardest year of my life, but if it had not gone down so drastically, I never would have escaped. I would have kept trying to play the game, waiting for the society to get new light. I would have either married some poor sister and had a family and lived with guilt the rest of my life because I'd wasted it all being something that I'm not supposed to be, or I would have lived alone forever. So if you're a gay witness trying to figure out what to do not play their game. Don't try to change yourself. Don't try to pray the gay away. You will mess yourself up. Be very careful until you have a solid plan to get out. But remember, anyone telling you that this is a choice that you made, that you chose this lifestyle, is wrong, and you know it. No one that grows up in that sort of high control, oppressive environment chooses it. If I could have chosen to be straight, I would have done it in a second. All I wanted to do in the world was to be a pioneer and live the perfect little witness life. I hated who I was. It was never a choice I made, and it's the same for you. Do not kill yourself. It will take time for you to recover. It took me most of my 20s, but you can recover. Now I'm living with a great partner, and I don't hate myself anymore. My old witness friends are still shunning me, but you know what? It's their loss. I have made better friends since then that love me unconditionally. You can do this. You deserve happiness without changing who you are, and you will find it. So that's my fun story about leaving the Jehovah's Witnesses. Sadly, it took me much longer than this to fully wake up, but that's a story for another day. I hope that my experience helps somebody in some way, and regardless of your situation, thanks for watching all of this. I really appreciate it. Here is to better days for us all.